2024 wild card review. Just say overall, the quality of games was disappointing. I mean, my expectations were not all that high in the first place, and I went on to talk about that in the preview. But the first game was a real dud. And it was this Chargers-Texans game. I'm just going to get to the main points on these games. Not going to go into a lot of detail on these wild cards because it gets serious in the divisional round. But Chargers had their opportunities early. I mean, they ended up settling for 2 field goals. And if you're familiar with Jim Harbaugh, and I'm a Jim Harbaugh fan, I'm an old 49ers fan, Jim Harbaugh is a conservative coach. And the Chargers decided to go conservative, kick 2 field goals. I mean, it's one thing if you want to get 3 points to start the game. But that second field goal on the road does nothing for you. And the Chargers had opportunities to go up either 10-0 or even potentially 14-0. They couldn't do it. You could say the Texans defense kept them in the game, and it didn't take much for the Texans to take control. And once they did take control, they ran away with it and really mainly took advantage of Chargers' mistakes. I mean, the just glaring statistic is that Justin Herbert threw 3 interceptions the entire regular season. And this game alone, he threw 4. I mean, when could you ever say that about a quarterback that started an entire season? He played a full season, and he had more interceptions in a single playoff game than he did the whole regular season. I mean, he had a very rough game. I mean, one of those interceptions, to be fair, was not on him. But the Chargers need to get better receivers. I mean, they were beat more often than I would have expected up front. Especially the Texans defense was winning at the line of scrimmage, especially with pass rush. I didn't think the Texans played great, but the main thing was they weren't turning the football over like the Chargers were. They won the turnover battle. They're at home. And, the Chargers let the Texans get back in it. I mean, they were really never out of it. That's the point. They never put any real distance between them and the Chargers, so it didn't take much effort to get back in the game, and the crowd was always in it. It was a very discouraging game for the Chargers. I think they still have a good future. I picked them to win this game. I still think in many ways they should have won this. But they just need to continue to build and get more talent in certain areas. Herbert, this was a game to forget. But he's 0-2 in his playoff career, and Jim Harbaugh and his coaching staff could have made some different decisions, but they didn't deserve to win the game. Texans did. And I'll just say about the first half, though, especially the first quarter, neither of these teams looked like they even belonged in the playoffs. So the Chargers are going home. The Texans looked much better in the second half. More like the Texans they should be. And their reward is they're going to Kansas City. And I'll just say it right now, I don't think they have a chance. They played anything like they did. Basically, they played half a football game. I expect them to come out better. But the Texans they've got some flaws. And their quarterback is not playing his best, but it was good enough. It was good enough in the wild card round. Okay, second game. Steelers and Ravens. This was the Amazon Prime game. And I'm thankful that Amazon had it this year, not Peacock, because I was saying to myself, if this is a Peacock game, I'm not going to give in, I'm not going to get it. Glad it was on Amazon. Ravens and Steelers. The divisional rivalry in this game. At least you had an excellent team playing in the Ravens. But both games were disappointing. Because the Steelers couldn't even hang. I mean, the Steelers gave up 299 yards rushing. Coming this game, I said the key for the Steelers was what? It was to win the turnover battle and then sell out to stop the run, which I understand is a tall task. And you have to pick your poison in the running game between Lamar and Derrick Henry, but they couldn't stop either. The Steelers did not belong on the field with the Ravens, and the Ravens just ran all over them. There was very little resistance, and Russell Wilson just wasn't good enough. I mean, when the Steelers went up against real competition late in the season, they couldn't hang, whether it was the Ravens or the Chiefs, the Eagles, and I know I'm forgetting a team, but yeah, the Steelers, good enough to make in the playoffs, but that's it. The Ravens did what they should have done. They played a complete football game. This game was over, and it was over early. Yeah, the Steelers made it a little interesting in the third quarter. Ravens completely controlled it. Complete domination. It was humiliating for the Steelers, and not too many times in the history of the Steelers been humiliated. But the Ravens advance, and they're going to Buffalo for the best game of the divisional round, a game we want to see. Bills and Ravens. It's just very simple. The Steelers couldn't hang with them. Lamar didn't even have to be great. He was just solid, efficient. He played a turnover-free game. And Derrick Henry... Man, Derrick Henry is one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game. And when he's done and he's retired in his career, he may be known as I'll say the second best power running back in NFL history. I mean, behind Jim Brown. I think of the greatest running backs I've ever seen, and I would say he's the second best. I didn't see Emmitt Smith in his prime. I saw the tail end of Emmitt Smith's career. I got to see the end of Barry Sanders, and Barry Sanders was still amazing from start to finish. But to see Derrick Henry all the way through, he's the best running back I've seen for just an entire career. Better than LaDainian Tomlinson. That's saying a lot. And I'd even say, this is... If you put the playoffs together, I may even say better than Adrian Peterson. And I'll say I've seen more of Derrick Henry than Adrian Peterson. I've just seen more of his games. But man, Derrick Henry might be a top 5 running back of all time by the time he's done. When you're thinking about what he's done in regular season and playoffs combined. Wow, the Ravens are looking really good right now when they need to, but most likely they're going to have to go through Buffalo and Kansas City. But next week is the true test, and that's when the pressure's really on. There really wasn't much pressure in the wild card round for Lamar, but the pressure's on for the divisional round, especially on the road. The Steelers did what they should have done. I mean, the Ravens did what they should have done. Steelers certainly did not, and I think the question is, where are the Steelers now? I mean, Russell Wilson's not the answer. He's a temporary quarterback. He's just a bridge to the next quarterback. Mike Tomlin, I think the Steelers really have to consider moving on from Mike Tomlin. He's had a great run, but here's the question. Yeah, you had all these years with winning records. That's nice. You're in the playoffs pretty much every year. But when was the last time the Steelers were a serious Super Bowl contender? I mean, an actual Super Bowl contender. It's been a long time, and since when was the standard in Pittsburgh just the playoffs? I mean, I know how it is as a 49ers fan. The standard around here is not making the playoffs. The standard is not the NFC Championship. It's about the Super Bowl. Winning the Super Bowl. It's the same way in Pittsburgh. And have they lost sight of that? I mean, the franchise itself, ownership. That just making the playoffs isn't good enough for the Steelers, and I feel bad for someone like T.J. Watt. I mean, he's an all-time great Steeler. He belongs at the table with the greatest Steeler defenders of all time. He's that good. And he's never played in a really big-time game. And he hasn't played in a Super Bowl. One of the all-time great defenders. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've gone through the Patriots. I mean, the Steelers did win Super Bowls during the Belichick-Brady era, yes, but could they really compete with the Patriots in their dynasty? No, they couldn't head-to-head. And then, yeah, they made the playoffs so many of these years with the Chiefs run, and they're not on the Chiefs level either. And, I just expect more from the Steelers. Okay, let's move on to the Sunday morning Bills and, I don't know why I was about to say Browns. I was saying Broncos. Bills. Broncos came out and started off well, and they really played a great first half of football. It could have been 10-10 at halftime. They missed the field goal, and then it just unraveled in the second half, and the Bills turned it on. The Bills were patient in the first half. They didn't force things, and the better team eventually prevailed. Big second half from Josh Allen. The defense played much better, and the Bills, too, did what they had to do. It ended up being a dominating win at home. And, the Broncos, it looks like they have something in Bo Nix. And they've got the head coach in Sean Payton. But I say this about some of these young teams, though. And I say the same thing about the Chargers. It looks good. But that's going to be a very difficult division going forward because you have the Chiefs and then the Chargers and the Broncos are going to be duking it out in the second place. There's no guarantee for either of those teams that they're going to come back and be back in the playoffs. It's difficult to have 3 teams come out of one division consistently. But I feel similar, very similar about the Bills as I did about the Ravens. They won. They were clearly the superior team, but they did what they should have. They took care of their business. And now the pressure's on going the divisional round. Now you're facing a much better opponent. So the 2 players this postseason that the pressure's most on is Lamar and Josh Allen. So we're going to get ready for that showdown next week in Buffalo. But the thing is, you didn't learn anything about the Ravens. You didn't learn anything about the Bills. We'll learn something in Buffalo next week. Sunday afternoon. Eagles-Packers. I thought this was going to be the most interesting game. And this was it wasn't about Jalen Hurts. It wasn't about Saquon Barkley. Though they both had good games. This was about the Eagles' defense. The Eagles' defense was the star of the wild card game in Philadelphia. And I think the other story was the Packers' injuries. I mean, the Packers could not move the ball in the first half. I mean, both quarterbacks struggled in the first half to really produce big plays. Big plays, chunk plays through the air. But the better defense was the Eagles, as we expected. And, it was about turnovers. The Eagles had a cleaner game. They played a better game. I mean, both running backs had good games between Barkley and Jacobs. But injuries were a major factor. Because the Packers, I mean, they're just dropping like flies. I mean, too bad they couldn't have been healthier. They weren't quite ready, I think, for the physical play of the Eagles. But you look at, by the end of the game, the Packers were down to their 4th, 5th, and 6th receivers. I mean, when Dobbs went out, I mean, you're already down Watson. Then you lose Dobbs. I mean, you're in bad shape at that point. You're really in bad shape. And you lose 2 offensive linemen, and you start having injuries, on defense too. It's just too much to overcome. But what hurt, and I don't want to make excuses for the Packers. The Eagles were without a doubt the better team. And they were the better team all season. But Jalen Hurts needs to cut down on... Jordan Love needs to cut down on the interceptions. I mean, he's a big play quarterback. He's got a great arm. He does many things well, but he is a gunslinger. And you ask yourself, well, who's Jordan Love more like? Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers? And the answer is Brett Favre. Brett Favre, it's high risk, high reward with Brett Favre. With amazing touchdowns, but he would throw his interceptions. And Jordan Love, he'll let it rip. And sometimes he really pays for it. I mean, I saw it in that divisional round last year, 49ers Packers. I was really surprised at some of the passes he attempted to make. He's got to protect the football better for the Packers to get to the next level. I mean, they need a healthier team. They need, I think, again, more impact players in the Packers' front seven. But you're not going to win against the elite quarterbacks turning the football over like Jordan Love does. The Eagles, they didn't do a lot on offense. And I have to say I'm a little concerned if I'm them moving forward, because you're going to need more out of Jalen Hurts than you had this week. And they are set to face the Rams. And the Rams are an indoor team. They're going outdoor. And we'll see how Matthew Stafford does outdoors in the cold weather. But the Rams are a better all-around team than the Packers. I have no doubt of that. And the Eagles are going to have to play better this week than they did in the wild card round. They'll need to be more balanced. I mean, the defense did their job. The offense is going to have to be better. And specifically, Jalen Hurts is going to have to do better. The evening game on Sunday was actually the best game. The Buccaneers hosting the Commanders. It was competitive. It was... both quarterbacks played well. Of all the games, I would say this was the best played game from both sides, the most competitive. The Commanders come out, and they were aggressive. Dan Quinn was aggressive, and he does have a good thing going with being the defensive mind and having Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator. I think about Cliff Kingsbury. He'll probably get another opportunity to be the head coach, but he may be one of those guys. He's a better offensive coordinator than he is a head coach. And Jaden Daniels, so impressive. Throwing the football and running when he needed to. Converting on fourth downs, making big plays, making all types of plays, and just being cool on the road. Winning on the road is you have the young quarterback on offense, and you have a very veteran defense. And I think that helped them. I thought the overall experience of the Buccaneers was going to help them, but Jaden Daniels was so cool, and he protected the football, and he made the big plays when they needed to. And Baker Mayfield played very well on the other side too. It just wasn't quite good enough, but really great effort from him. He left it all out there. But the Commanders' surprise season continues, and they're going to be going up to Detroit. In the final game. Vikings and Rams, and all the attention this week really was on Sam Darnold. I mean, what kind of Sam Darnold was going to be out there on the field? Because you look at the way they lost the Vikings to the Lions. What kept coming back to me all week was there going to be carryover? And boy, was there carryover. And Sam Darnold continued to struggle. It wasn't just one bad game. I mean, you're facing a good team, you are, but it wasn't just one bad game. It was really a continuation of what happened in Detroit. You know, this was in Arizona. And what was really surprising, though, is just to see how off he was. And all the mistakes that were made. And he was very indecisive. Darnold was inaccurate. It was obviously his first playoff game, but at this point he's very much a veteran quarterback. But yes, inaccurate, indecisive, poor awareness in the pocket. I mean, he was not feeling the pass rush. He was not getting rid of the ball. He was hanging on to the football. He was, getting jittery in the pocket, kind of happy feet in the pocket, which you never want to see. I mean, he was high with his passes. He was low with his passes. He was behind with his passes. I mean, there's the interception. There was the fumble. I mean, it was just a disaster. It was embarrassing for the Vikings. And to see such a great season, a team with 14 regular season wins in a 17-game season, yes, but 14-3 to lose like this to a 10-win Rams team. I mean, Sean McVay is always going to have his teams well coached, well prepared, and they're a younger team in many ways. To come out and do that to the Vikings, oh man, was that bad? Or what? But, Darnold costed him the game. I'm not going to say the offensive line played great, but there was, he was sacked 9 times. And some of those were certainly on him. He had to wait all this time to become a starter on a good team. He gets the playoffs. And then he performs like that. And that he wasn't able to shrug the loss off that really affected him last week. The Lions lost. I mean, you go from potentially being a 1 seed to being a wild card and falling to a 5 from potentially a 1 to a 5 in seeding. And there were so many eyes on Sam Darnold. It just felt like this was a Sam Darnold game. That you don't know what's going to be the future for him. Are the Vikings going to go to McCarthy? Or is Sam Darnold going to get a shot? Is he going to compete? Is he going to even be back with the Vikings? But he played like a rookie. I mean, just compare how Jaden Daniels played in his first playoff game compared to Sam Darnold. And I was saying while watching this game, talking about with some of the others, saying, Sam Darnold, the thing is, yeah, he had a great season, but let's look at his supporting cast. He does have Justin Jefferson. He's got Addison. He's got Hawkinson. Yeah, not for the whole season, but he's got Hawkinson now. He's got Aaron Jones. I mean, let's not pretend that he doesn't have a above average supporting cast. He's got a very good play caller in his head coach. And a defense that plays very hard on the other side of the ball. What a disappointing season. I mean, You wouldn't have said that if you knew that the Vikings, at the start of the season, as you said, hey, would you take a playoff loss in the first round, the wild card round, and the Vikings, if you really held it to them and they were being honest, they would say they'd take it. But after you go and have a 14 win season, and you lose in the first round, but that's what it is to be a Vikings fan, right? Feel the pain. Feel the pain, Vikings, over the years. And the Rams, they advance. And they're feeling good because no one's really expecting too much out of them. I mean, I picked the Rams in this one. But they've got the veteran quarterback, the pocket quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who so outplayed Sam Darnold. And he's got Puka Nacua, and he's got Cooper Kupp, who didn't have to do a whole lot. Tyler Higbee went down, but they've got their weapons on offense. Now they've got this young defense that they put together, this front seven they've drafted so well. And it's fun to see them play. They don't have one real star yet. I mean, that's one of the things I kind of criticize the Packers for, but these are young guys and their potential. They have the potential to have stars here with Verse and Young and others in that defensive front. I mean, this could be a great group moving forward for the Rams. I like their offense. I like their defense. And, they're going to go up against the Eagles, and that's going to be a really hard game. But I expect them to give the Eagles a really good fight. And after all, the pressure is going to be on the Eagles, not the Rams. Pressure will be on the Eagles, and I expect the Eagles to have to play a better game to put the Rams away. So I went 4-2 my first week of picks. And I'm hoping for better games in the divisional round. And of course you should when you have the first top seeds both playing. And we've weeded out some of the bad teams, some of the teams that don't belong. And you wonder, who's going to make noise and who could possibly upset. And I'll just say it now that I've liked the Eagles, but I don't like the Eagles quite as much after that week one, that wild card round. And the Lions, they get the Commanders. That's not what I was expecting. But it's going to be an interesting game. But we'll find out how good this Jaden Daniels is. This first year, I don't expect the Texans to give the Chiefs much trouble. And clearly, the big game is the Bills at the Ravens host. Clearly, the big game is the Bills hosting the Ravens. That's the final game of the divisional round, the Sunday late afternoon, early evening game.